In the heart of a small, isolated town in rural America, a sinister secret lurked behind the walls of an old Victorian mansion. This picturesque house stood at the edge of the town, surrounded by dense woods that could swallow the screams of any unfortunate soul who wandered too close. The townsfolk knew little of the mansion's current occupant, Dr. Lionel Graves, who had moved in a decade ago after retiring from a prestigious medical career. Known for his reclusive nature, Dr. Graves rarely ventured into town, and when he did, his presence was as fleeting as a shadow in the night. Dr. Graves was a man obsessed with immortality, a fixation that had slowly eroded his sanity. He believed that by harvesting the organs of the young and healthy, he could stave off the ravages of time and perhaps even achieve eternal life. This twisted conviction drove him to kidnap unsuspecting victims, whom he would imprison in the labyrinthine basement of his mansion. One such victim was Emily, a vibrant 23-year-old who had recently moved to the town in search of a quieter life. One chilly autumn evening, she was walking home from her job at the local diner when a black van pulled up beside her. Before she could react, a chloroform-soaked cloth was pressed against her face, and darkness consumed her. When Emily awoke, she found herself strapped to a cold, metal operating table. The room was dimly lit by a single, flickering bulb that cast eerie shadows on the blood-stained walls. The air was thick with the stench of antiseptics and decay. Her body ached, and her head throbbed with a dull pain. As her eyes adjusted to the gloom, she saw the horrifying instruments of Dr. Graves's trade: scalpels, bone saws, and jars filled with organs suspended in formaldehyde. Fear surged through Emily as she realized the gravity of her situation. She was not alone in the room. Across from her, another table held the lifeless body of a young man, his chest cavity yawning open, exposing a gory void where his heart should have been. The sickening realization hit her. She was next. Desperation fueled her will to escape. She strained against the leather straps binding her wrists and ankles, her skin chafing and bleeding. Her efforts were futile until she noticed a scalpel within arm's reach, its blade glinting menacingly. With a surge of adrenaline, she managed to grasp the handle and saw through the straps, freeing herself with trembling hands. As she rose from the table, her legs wobbled, and she had to steady herself against the wall. The room swam before her eyes, but she knew she had to move quickly. She crept towards the door, her breath hitching, as she heard footsteps echoing down the corridor. Dr. Graves was coming. Emily slipped out of the room and into the narrow hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. She moved silently, her senses heightened by the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The mansion's basement was a maze of rooms and corridors, each more sinister than the last. She passed by cells where other victims were imprisoned, their eyes hollow with despair. She couldn't help them now. She had to focus on her own survival. Each step was a testament to her willpower, as she fought the urge to scream and run. She spotted a staircase at the end of the corridor, leading up to the main floor. Just as she reached the foot of the stairs, a hand clamped down on her shoulder, spinning her around. Dr. Graves stood before her, his face twisted into a grotesque mask of rage and madness. His white coat was splattered with blood, and his eyes burned with an unholy fervor. "You think you can escape?" he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "You're mine." Emily's survival instincts kicked in. She slashed at him with the scalpel, catching him across the cheek. Blood spurted from the wound, and he howled in pain, momentarily loosening his grip. Seizing the opportunity, Emily shoved him away and bolted up the stairs. The house above was just as eerie as the basement, with antique furniture covered in dust and cobwebs. Emily sprinted through the dimly lit rooms, her only thought being to put as much distance between herself and her captor as possible. She could hear Dr. Graves's enraged shouts behind her, growing fainter as she ran. She dashed through the grand foyer, her breath ragged, and flung open the front door. The cool night air hit her like a jolt of electricity, and she kept running, her feet pounding against the gravel driveway. She didn't stop to look back, driven by sheer terror and the desperate need for freedom. The town was a mile away, and Emily's legs burned with exertion as she sprinted through the darkness. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Her mind raced with thoughts of escape, of finding help, of surviving this nightmare. But just as the lights of the town came into view, she heard the roar of an engine behind her. The black van appeared, its headlights piercing through the night like the eyes of a predator. Emily pushed herself harder, her lungs screaming for air. But it was too late. The van skidded to a halt, and Dr. Graves leaped out, his face a mask of fury. He tackled Emily to the ground, her screams muffled by the forest's dense canopy. "You thought you could get away from me," he snarled, dragging her back towards the vehicle. "You're mine." Emily fought with every ounce of strength she had left, kicking and clawing, but Dr. Graves' grip was unyielding. He forced her into the back of the van, slamming the door shut. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her was the distant glow of the town, so close, yet impossibly far. When the van roared back into the night, the town remained oblivious to the horror that had just unfolded on its outskirts. Emily's disappearance would be just another unsolved mystery, another name added to the growing list of missing persons. The authorities would search, and the townsfolk would whisper, but the truth would remain buried in the depths of Dr. Graves's mansion. In the basement of that cursed house, the doctor continued his gruesome work, the grotesque collection growing with each passing day, and somewhere in the shadows, the echoes of Emily's screams joined the chorus of the lost, a haunting reminder of the evil that lurked in the heart of the seemingly idyllic town.
Thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button, and we'll notify you when the next story comes out.